All right. We are live. Sorry if you were waiting. We were just totally vibing and talking about gin and explicit crocodile stuff. And it's weird. Don't even try to understand. But good evening and welcome to Winterviews. I am Catherine Silva, Cat for short. And this evening we are joined by Aquino Loayza. Hello, Aquino. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. I'm doing lovely this Thursday. How are you doing?
I am doing pretty well. It's been a day. Been doing a lot of work today. What about you?
It never really stops. You got the day job, and then you come into third estate stuff, and so many exciting things happening with that. And then I'm getting edits on another project that I'm working on, and also trying to make time to spotlight other people and what they've got going on in their world. So always a full day, but always a fulfilling day is what I like to say.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. We will be talking about Third Estate a little bit towards the end of this broadcast. For those of you who do not know, we are both part of Third Estate Books, which is it's a publishing company that's becoming a co-op that is highlighting queer, BIPOC voices, and you'll hear more about it in a little bit. But for right now, we are going to discuss the topic of the evening, which is existential horror. It's something that we both have written a bit about because it's such a fun subject to discuss. And existential horror is basically about the meaning of life and death and how characters perceive it and how it gets kind of twisted in certain horror stories. It can be very nihilistic. And today, I would like to start our conversation by asking what drew you towards the subject of existentialist horror to write about.
Oh, and that's such a layered question, right?
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned nihilism. As I've gotten older and a little bit more in myself and aware of myself, I would say that I'm a bit of an optimistic nihilist, which kind of is to say that I've had a pretty tough upbringing and things like that, and seeing so many things that don't have any cohesive rules to them. Like there's no moral bend. Things just crazy just happen with no, how do you say, rhyme or reason to them. I kind of begin to think about, well, what do things mean? Is there meaning in things? I want to explore that. I want to be able to express that and talk about that. And that naturally leads to existentialism. When things, I think when really sad things happen, you can channel that into something beautiful and artistry. And I think that existentialism is that for me. It gives me that opportunity to kind of process the lack of reason in the world that I perceive and play that out over books and over different mentalities and create tapestries and stories that reflect that dread that we all have of not feeling like we have agency, so to speak.
Yeah, there's definitely something to say about characters who feel like they're being propelled and pulled in ways that they can't control. So there's definitely this idea that you are not in control in existentialist horror. But as an author, you're in control, so it's kind of it's a little funny being the god of that universe, I guess, on the exterior, being the one who's moving around your character and giving them all kinds of grief and
it's funny because like it creates this cognitive dissonance of I want the world to be good and everything good happens to good people. But here I am having the opportunity to create a world like that, and I'm just putting good people through the freaking ringer.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
why do I do that? I should probably unpack that. We'll put it away. Let's write a few more books. We'll figure it out. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's just you though. I think that's a thing no matter what the genre. And
Yeah.
yeah, we really like to just stick it to our characters. And speaking of sticking it to our characters, I am about 100 pages into Deep right now. It's a big old book. I started it last week with the hope that I could finish it by this talk, and that was a little ridiculous of me to assume that I could do it. But it is very entertaining so far, and you have definitely put your character through the ringer. And I would like to discuss Deep.
Mm-hmm.
It is your debut novel and is very existential, but also has a cosmic horror lean to it. Did you know that you were going to blend those two genres together when you started writing it?
I feel like to an extent they go hand in hand. They're almost like in this long embattled marriage where sometimes they don't want to acknowledge each other and they go to sleep in separate rooms, but they're still together. They're still a thing. And I feel like that about cosmic horror and existential horror, because cosmic horror is this concept of the world is so much bigger than I could have imagined. And existentialism can kind of evoke that same feeling in a lot of ways. So to me, they always feel like a natural pairing to play with. So I wouldn't say that I had cognizance in going into it of like, no, this is going to be existential and cosmic. I just kind of use the words interchangeably without really taking a step back to unpack that piece of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I gotcha. When you were developing the idea for Deep, was it, did you kind of have an HP Lovecraft vibe going into it? Because that also, I got that vibe pretty early on.
Yeah. So there's something to be said about H.P. Lovecraft's prose. Historically, he's been a writer who's had some opinions outside of the page. And I think there's this fun little dichotomy in me of just being like a contradiction, which is a big theme in Deep, is you see as you unpack it. There's a lot of themes that kind of paradox each other. That's my relationship with Lovecraft. The others that he wrote about or inspired his writing is often people who look like me, who have names like I do, and have lived experiences more like mine than like his. And I think there's something empowering about going into that genre that was built entirely off the fear of someone who looks like you and flipping it on
Mhm.
its head. So yeah, there is definitely an intentionality of playing with Lovecraft's toys while not really playing to his rule book step by step, you know? And I'm sure
Yeah.
some cosmic theorists have mixed feelings about that, justifiably so. I know that the Lovecraft acolytes are very endeared to him, and I'm not judging. But
Mhm.
it was me to kind of use that influence in the book, but deconstruct it from a different point of view as a person of color.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can see where that would give it a different spin, and it's a really good spin so far. Um, what were some of your other influences when you started writing Deep?
Well, I would say people always laugh at me when I say this to them because they think, "Oh yeah, it makes sense." But the movie The Lighthouse
Mm-hmm.
is a massive influence on that work, but not in the way that you would think. Yeah, it's oceanic. It's about people going mad and isolation and what have you. But the theme that I keep coming back to it is the story is so paradoxical. It's so ambiguous. There's no inherent meaning besides what you want to take from it and ascribe
Mm-hmm.
to it. And I really love stories that can work and it can have the same sequence of events. And you can go in a theater with 5 people and all 5 people will walk away with a different takeaway. And I love that in prose too, where we can all read the same book and see the same character and go through the same journey and have totally different feelings about who that person is and what did they learn or what did they not learn. And that
Mm.
was a really big piece of deep to me. And it further plays into that existentialism of nothing has any inherent meaning. So it's like nothing has any meaning, and there's just this feeling of like I'm not in control, and everyone's taking the different thing from the same story because you're ascribing your own lived experience to this person's trauma that you've bared
Mm.
witness to. I think that's really fun.
Yeah. Um, my question just totally vanished out of my head. I like the idea of the nonsensicalness. That's not a word. We're just going to go with it. The
But right,
idea that the story is nonsensical, but it's so I guess this does then relate to my question of when you started conceptualizing Deep, were you thinking of a character when you first started it, or did you just have kind of like the idea of the story first?
I think I had the vibe,
The vibe. Okay.
the aura that it exuded was really important to me. And I did have a character in mind. It wasn't necessarily the protagonist, but it was a slicker man who I think you might have just gotten introduced
Yeah.
to based
Yep.
off where you. He's fun. You're gonna love him. But that was the main driver. As I can't believe as many movies and novels and stuff that have been set in Maine that no one has ever thought of doing a haunted lobster fisherman or a cosmic lobster. It just felt like such a natural pairing to me, and that was
Mm-hmm.
what started the book. And obviously, I started as I continued to craft it. I started to really get all of the themes that I needed to get out of me onto the page. But the Slicker Man was the one that I was like, yeah, I just want to write a story about a demented fisherman of some type because nobody's doing that, and that seems
Yeah.
like such a go. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yeah. I am kind of surprised, but I'm also not surprised that that somebody hasn't, because I mean there are a fair number of horror writers in Maine, um, and I have not read much. Like there's a lot to be read,
Mm.
of Maine horror, but cosmic horror in Maine, I have not seen much of personally, besides the one true Stephen King, um, and so that was a really neat and original concept for the book. What's interesting to me is and makes total sense is the idea that you didn't go into this with your characters in mind first, which means that having I guess having it not make sense is almost a little bit easier that way for your characters. And I don't know why I think this, but it just seems to me that like there's a little more detachment there. It's easier to kind of put them through the ringer that way and have a little bit more playfulness with the plot.
Mm.
But maybe that's just me. That's what it seems like to me. Um
So I will say this: there's themes there, but it's the contradictions in the themes that make it nonsensical for Deep.
okay.
I would. There's like clear through lines, but there's several through lines that if you were to untangle them, there's knots that can't be untangled because they don't make sense. Um,
Gotcha.
but what I would say is, when it comes to that, it is a little bit easier in some respects, but it's a little bit more challenging in other respects because you have to make what they're going through have a point to it,
Sure.
for it to really resonate with people after they put it down. And that was the challenge, was how do I make a character that is getting enough stuff, that enough crap throughout the horror novel, that you can empathize with them, but you don't entirely feel bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like a little bit of like, well, they're playing with dangerous waters. Deep.
Yep.
Some of this is a comeuppance, and making people kind of wrestle with the cognitive dissonance of showing empathy, but also kind of wanting this person to get their comeuppance, and seeing which people land on which side of that spectrum by the end of the novel is always.
Yeah, well, that's definitely having three-dimensional characters. They're not Mary Sue's running around being all perfect, and that's really nice to see. You have several characters.
Very messy.
Yeah, you've got several characters who are just really interesting and well-rounded. It does take place in Maine. For those watching, would you mind telling them about your Maine connection?
Sure. So I love Maine. I think Maine loves me. It hasn't accepted me as one of their own yet, so that's a work in progress, but we'll get there. I'm gonna write a few more books. I don't know. I've always been drawn to it. There's this ruggedness to it, combined with that oceanic mystique, I would say. It feels like a place that I know really, really, really well, but also completely strange to me at the same time. There's a magicalness in the air for me when I visit and when I spend time there that I don't find anywhere else in my life. I've been married in Maine. I got married in Maine. I vacationed in Maine dozens of times. I just love it. It speaks to me on like a artistic level. There's something about that ruggedness aligned with along the ocean there that just really speaks to me, and really evokes strong emotional responses out of me that I can't quite quantify, but that doesn't nullify the emotion.
I did not know that you got married in Maine. I feel like I should have known that, but I didn't know that.
It's okay. It's okay. I forgive you.
I was going to ask, do you have plans to revisit the world of Deep in any future works?
So this is like maybe just my obsession with connected universes, and as you'll read through Deep, you'll find this theme of cycles and things repeating over and over again. But my other novel, The Monologist, that I'm working on, Juneberg exists in that world. We're not telling any stories about Juneberg. We're not necessarily talking too much about it other than in passing. But I think that for me, a lot of my works are going to be interconnected in the sense that they exist in this same world, but maybe not on this same cycle of it. That's a long way to say that I don't know if I'll ever explore the same characters in Deep again.
Mm-hmm.
Juneberg itself and the concept of the world that Juneberg exists in is something that I think the more that I write, there's stuff left to explore in the world and the rules of said world that I would like to do. So yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Okay. Speaking of your next book, The Monologist, which is coming soonish, for those wondering, would you mind talking about how existentialism plays a part in that book?
Sure. So it's a period piece. It's set in 1960s Las Vegas. It follows a stand-up comedian from Massachusetts who goes to Las Vegas to pursue his dreams, and kind of starts to discover that in order to do that, it means sacrificing certain parts of himself that he's not necessarily ready to give, but also not sure exactly what it's going to take. So it explores existentialism in a very different lens than Deep, where it's less about the mortality and more about the powerlessness that exists within the current power structures that chew up lots and lots and lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Las Vegas, and I chose it in 1960s time period explicitly because it was a city in transition.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite what we know it to be today. It wasn't this glamorous adults playground quite yet, but the signs were there. It was on its way. And playing this scene of somebody who's grasping at straws and trying to become famous or pursue their dreams in this world where everybody is kind of a facade plays into this existential theme of powerlessness. He's at the whim of a machine that, if he fails to do this, is going to chew him up, and he's going to live a life that is not fulfilling to him. And I think that's something that's inherently human, and I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to. I think that a lot of people get that feeling that sometimes that the way that they're living their life, they would want to change some things. They want to do something different. They wish
Mm-hmm.
that they had opportunities to pursue those dreams, but often the system and the apparatus that exists around us really inhibits that growth. And the monologist explores that and a lot more.
Okay. Are we staying in kind of like a realistic setting, or do we kind of have some cosmic stuff going on like Deep, or what are some of the other ways that it differs besides the sort of which theme of existentialism we're looking at?
It's much less cosmic than Deep.
Okay.
I would say that, without trying to spoil too much, it's a deal with the devil type story.
Gotcha.
And I think that a lot of people can kind of fill in the blanks with what that means. And what the devil and that evil looks like to me might be very different than what it looks like to most other authors. But it's less cosmic.
Gotcha.
But it deals with some fantastical elements are in it for sure.
Okay. Awesome. And I guess, where did you come up with the idea for this one?
For the monologue?
Yeah.
I took my grandfather to Las Vegas for his 65th birthday. It was my first time ever going there. And I just thought to myself, what brought people here? This place is huge. There's so much going on. I'm flying into it, and there's nothing around it. And I think to myself, well, pick a spot in the desert and people move there. Somebody lived here at one point. What happened to the city to transform it into this? And what happened to the people who did that? And that's kind of was the initiating idea for me. I wanted to explore what early Vegas looks like to the people who were there before it started to become this adult playground that we all know, and the people who came in as a result of that. And then everything kind of spun out from there. I like to say it's a novel that explores the merits of reforming stuff versus revolutionizing stuff. And that's a heavy theme through it. So I like to say that it's probably the book that has most of my philosophy and the way that I conduct my life in out of anything that I've created. But the initiating thought was, wow, this place is freaking huge, but it's in the middle of nowhere. Why is that? I want to learn. So I learned.
Okay. And when did you go to Las Vegas? Was that a recent trip?
2021.
Okay.
Right after the pandemic had come down from its peak, everybody had been boosted, and the deal was incredible. And my grandfather was always like, I want to go one last time before I pass. And I got to give him the opportunity to reunite with his brothers, because one of his brothers lives in Arizona. And I got all of his brothers together for the weekend, and then there was me. So I'm hanging out with all these 5-year-olds and 70-year-olds, and then there's me, who's a little bit more lively than that. And it was a little bit of an odd pairing, but I had a good time. It was fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like fun.
Always happy to see you and your families in their happy place, you know?
Yeah. when you were coming up with this one, again, so it was a concept idea first, and then and setting, I would say definitely first, and then the characters kind of flowed in. Is that, I guess I would say that seems to be typical for the most part with what you write, or have you found that with shorter stories it might be a different case?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'm a little bit of what they call a pantser. I'm sure the writers in our audience know what that is. I write when the inspiration hits me, and I see where it leads me. And then I take a step back after a little bit, a few sessions of that, and go, okay, what am I trying to say with this? Let me see what I've written. Let me see what it is. And what do I want to channel this into? What is this pulling from me? And then that's where the characters really start to flesh out. And that's where
Okay.
the world end result really flesh out.
Hmm.
But it always a feeling that's inside of me that I need to get to the page. And then
Yeah.
once that feeling is there, I let it kind of gestate and then ink dries on the page, so to speak. Not literally, because I have horrible handwriting. You'll never see me pen write a draft in my life. But metaphorically, when the ink dries, I go back and go, oh, shit, so that's what I was feeling. Let me explore that. Let me find a way to make that into something more cohesive and coherent. Although one day I would love to write a novel that is just a stream of consciousness like that. I know nobody will buy it, but it's okay.
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is, do you have any works in progress right now that fall into the existential horror genre, or any ideas that you're hoping to start working on?
Yeah, so I'm actually starting the research on my next project. There was a tie between, I really wanted to explore imperialism through the lens of a Peruvian American who's able to somehow travel back into Peru during the conquistador
Mm.
era, and seeing the difference of like the Incas, who were also imperialists and conquering native peoples, versus the Spanish, who had come to conquer people. That one's going to require a lot more research than I have time for right now. That's the next project. The next
Mhm.
project I'm looking at is a cosmic horror that's going to be set in 1970s Boston during the busing era, and it's going to be following a Latino immigrant who is immigrated to Boston during this, and also juxtaposed with a lesbian cop who's in the closet about her sexuality and trying to reckon with her sexuality, and being a law enforcement officer at the same
Mhm.
time, and trying to figure it out, all with this cosmic backdrop of a cult. So that's the pitch. That's the elevator pitch. If you
Okay.
agents are listening, we can talk shop. But that's the elevator pitch for that one, and I've been doing through the research phase of that. And obviously, being from Boston, as my name says, Aquino Loayza,
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
comes really naturally to me. So I haven't turned on the accent yet, but if I don't know if you can see the comments, or if there are comments. If they want me to turn it on, I can turn it on. Don't you
I
guys
was going to
worry.
say I can see the comments. So if anybody is requesting Boston accent Aquino, uh, you just let me know and we can switch it.
I perform tricks
Um,
on command. Don't worry.
uh, I guess my next question is going to be the one that I ask. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, here we go. Wait, Alyssa wants it. Jeff wants it.
What do they
Turn it
want me
on.
to say? What do they want me to say? What do you guys want? Give it to me. They said, turn it
So
on, Townie. All right, I got. Worry about it. What's going on?
I guess the next question, which you can answer in Townie, is
Yeah.
what genres you like paired with your existentialist horror.
Well, it's kind of funny like that. I really am a big fan of the cosmic horror. Also, I feel like comedy is an underrated part of doing any of that. I don't know how to say it, but Yeah, cosmic comedy. Gothic horror is a little bit underrated too. Um, you know, zombie horror. I haven't seen a lot of zombie horror going on lately. I remember we used to watch a lot of zombie movies when we were having supper at my grandma's house on Sunday. Sunday sauce. Love supper. What else? It's tough. I'm not really into the ghost horror. I don't really do ghosts. I've been to Salem enough times that I don't really want to do that. It's not really my thing. Don't try too hard. Just let it flow. Hey, kid, don't. This kid. I can't take Alyssa anyway. We went to Cappy's one time and she forgot a card. They wouldn't even let me buy my fireball. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. So I think ghost horror is not really something that I really like to do. Nautical horror is really fun, underrated subgenre. Body horror is not really my thing. Growing up in Boston, kid, you see a lot of things with bodies. You get a little desensitized. I guess I would really like to see more like cyber sci-fi elements into cosmic horror. It's not something that really happens too often. I would really love to see that a lot more, I think.
Okay. That was very, yeah, you went full bore there.
I always do. It's what I do, kid.
I am also going to admit this, but as I was reading deep, I could not hear it in a Boston accent. And really everybody in that book in a Boston accent. And I know that that's not how it's intended to be, but that's just how I heard it.
I mean, maybe a little bit. There's a little bit of a commentary on the people from Massachusetts that moved to Maine, and it's definitely making fun quite a little bit in there. I know, obviously, I'm from Massachusetts, and I haven't moved to Maine, but I've definitely spoken ad nauseum about my aspirations to do so. I am still making fun of those types of people, especially in Portland in particular, full of massholes, which I don't. You already know.
I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of people that have moved to Maine in the last 3 years that do not fit the Maine accent. And there are those of us that are lifers in Maine that do not have it at all. So not all of us talk like
not all of you talk like you're from Bengal.
No.
Going down. Damn. Yeah. It's okay.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I can't turn it on either. That's not an ability.
I mean, next time we have a book event, can I make you do a reading in a Boston accent?
Oh God, that would be terrible. People would run screaming.
Yeah. Do you like the John F. Kennedy? Chapter 2.
Yeah, I think the next reading is AuthorCon, so I don't think I want to scare everybody away there.
I hope my Duncan. You can distance yourself from me. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
So there's a little side comment about general, as I think people don't understand sometimes with horror, is comedy and horror are the same coin, and I think that people who are able to kind of flip through that do a really good job. Like The Wild Dark, like her partner and all the flashback scenes, that guy's freaking hilarious. He's super funny, especially the way that the audiobook narrates voice, it embellishes it just perfectly. It was really good.
She really, God. I mean, we talk about you had a pretty epic narrator for your book too. And when you hit the right person for your stuff, and they just make it sing, it is definitely something to behold.
Sure.
And Yeah, I really lucked out with that narrator, and I think you lucked out too. I've heard, I have not listened to any of Rain's stuff, but I know that he's got a very amazing voice.
You're, and they can do all sorts of great accents. They actually made a point to research the difference between a
Excuse
main
me.
accent. So there are main accents in the book, but Geo has a Boston accent, not a Maine accent. Where like
That's what I thought.
Jack or Peter, sorry, not Jack. I don't know why I came up with Jack. Peter has like the thickest Maine accent in the audiobook, and all of Peter's lines are freaking hilarious. I think Peter's my funniest character in the book by far is Peter. Super funny.
Yeah, he's definitely coming across as one of the funniest for sure. He's well written.
And I also like to tell people the one who's most like me in the whole novel is him. I'm a knucklehead. What can I say? That's what I do.
No, there has to be some levity in horror, especially in existentialist horror, because it's such a heavy subject that if you don't
Yeah.
pair it with something light, then it has a risk of just being too much.
And the important piece about comedy is if you play it too earnestly with the horror too, is the value of that discomfort nullifies, right? Because comedy is about being uncomfortable. It's a different type of discomfort, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
discomfort. So if you're creating this perpetual state of discomfort through the book, you're never letting somebody settle into it. You're not
Yeah.
always making them feel scared, but they're always never settled into it. They're always a little uneasy, whether it's because something's hilarious or something's terrifying, is depending on what chapter you're reading. But always keeping people in that state of the roller coaster is really, really important to engaging the reader.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Totally. So what are some of your favorite examples of existentialist horror? Like on the page or on the screen, or I don't know, in video games? I'm sure there's video games about existentialist horror.
Oh, there's no shortage of any of the three. I've already said The Lighthouse, so that feels like I'm cheating.
But
uh,
good to mention it again.
yeah,
It's
I did
not
mention this before. Have you heard of The Lighthouse? It's a good watch. Also The Lighthouse. No, I'm just playing. Hereditary is a really good one too. I think there's some existentialism there as you start to see her agency over her life get taken away. Obviously, it tends to lean into that mysticism and devil ritual type of kind of stuff towards the end. But there's a large swath of the movie where you don't have that information and you're
Mhm.
not quite sure what the hell's going on. You life fall apart. And that feeling of powerlessness and existentialism of not being in control and not knowing what's happenstance and what's pre-orchestrated is a really quick way into getting mad and crazy and insane. And I thought Hereditary did a really, really good job with that
Mhm.
subject matter, while also dealing with your favorite genre, grief.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not one that
The
I
other
have
one that
seen.
oh yeah,
I can't
well,
there's the levels of there's some levels of horror that I'm like I am scared of them. Like it's almost going to be too scary. And if I can watch it during a
yeah,
sunny day with like a pillow in front of me, then I'm good. That's one of those movies.
yeah,
I
gotcha.
lost
Yeah,
you.
no, it's dark. The other one that comes to mind for me is Alan Wake 2, this video game
Mm-hmm.
that just came out
Yeah.
recently. Um, this constant cycle, so to speak. I'll give you one line from it, or it's supposed to be like he's caught in this cycle or a loop, and he says something where he goes, "It's not a circle, it's a spiral,"
Yep.
and that was really fascinating to me, and that was really, really That's existentialism right there. When you start to like understand that you're just kind of following the same path, but not really having any understanding as to why and what that means for you and what comes from that. If there's some sort of cosmic force at play, or if you're just going insane,
Mm-hmm.
and the dread that one of that is really fun.
Yeah, it's a great game. Great
Oh, you
game.
played it? Oh, didn't know
I've
if you were a
not.
gamer or not.
I have not played it. I have played the original, and I have watched a playthrough of Alan Wake 2, but I don't own it yet. Someday when I have money.
I hear you. The musical's really good. That musical number is. I don't even
Yes,
like musicals.
it's one of my favorite
Like,
things ever.
it's an incredible mix of media. Like, I remember
Yeah,
I was playing it, and my wife was like, "You enjoy this? What's wrong with you? You hate
it's so
musicals."
good. Oh, it's
It
so
is.
good. And it's so unexpected, and I think that that's part of it too. It's just it's the whole mixed media thing with that game. Is you just, and it falls into that existential the quandary. You don't know what you're going to expect, and there's a musical suddenly. um
Yeah, I think there's something so beautifully human about that too. And I think that's the other piece about existentialism that, like, it's not really represented. We always talk about the bigger than us part of it, but the intrinsic humanity and not being able to predict or see patterns or cohesion or rhyme or
mhm,
reason in the way that people act is beautiful in a way. And that's why I like to say I'm
mhm.
an optimistic, because it kind of lets you ascribe the meaning to things that you want to take from it. But
Yep.
it's also terrifying. And Alan Wake 2 does such a great job at showing you the heart of a human being there. Like Sam Lake, the writer, you can tell that he wrote that. You can tell
Yeah.
that came from, it's just, you can tell that came from somewhere really deep in somebody. That it wasn't like made
Yeah.
in the studio to go big money off of this. No, that was a story. That was art. And I always, always will be drawn to somebody being authentic to themselves. Always.
And he's in it too. He's dancing in it and playing a part in it, and is fully involved, which is great too.
He's in it playing a fictionalized version of himself
Yes.
being written, or that he's written. Just to let
Yeah.
people in the audience know who on Wake, he plays a character that's himself, that's written by the writer in the novel that he has written himself.
Yeah.
That is so freaking meta. I love it.
It's
So
so
meta.
great. Um have you seen Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Oh yeah, I remember the first time I saw that film, I was like, I cannot believe that somebody made a film that literally is my personal philosophy so perfectly. And I was like emotional and sobbing as I watched it, because I was like, "This is everything, everywhere, all at once." Wait, that's the fucking title. What the hell? But it's how
Yeah.
I felt.
It's
It was
not
so
horror, but it is extremely existential, and man, is it a good story.
beautiful. It's a story as old as time of parents trying to connect with their kids,
Yeah.
and there's beauty and the differences of their lived experiences, and that movie explores that to the fullest. I love that movie,
Yeah. I
which I'm sure.
just saw.
Oh, did you really just see it?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was on Netflix. It just came to Netflix, so we had the opportunity to watch it, and watched it Monday, and yeah, it was just incredible.
That's gonna take a long time.
Yeah.
One of those ones that stays with you for years. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm speechless. I don't even know what to say other than excellent. If you're in the audience listening, take the time to watch that movie. It will change your perspective. I promise.
Mhm. Were there any others that you thought of that you wanted to mention, or?
I mean, there's plenty I could talk ad nauseum about them, but I would love to leave some time to talk about TE and some of that stuff as well. And I want to talk about some of your works because, your works have
Oh,
shown
that's,
tons of essentialism to me. Anyway, I see it in there.
yeah. I do like to write about existentialist stuff. I think it's very, it pairs with grief very well.
Yeah,
So,
it's like
but
shot in.
I don't want the episode to be about me. I want it to be focused on you, and
Yeah.
so I guess we will talk about Third Estate then, which is my what am I calling these questions again? These are the aside questions, which are a theme this season, where I ask about something that's not related to the topic, and that is Third Estate books. So I would like you to tell our audience a little bit about Third Estate and a little bit about the anthology that is coming out soon.
Sure. So, Third Estate is a project that is extremely collaborative. It's one of the only of its kind. It's a horror publishing company. We've talked about in the past that it's a little bit of a different project. We're trying to approach and take projects on that have something to say in their books. We're not necessarily looking for the biggest names with the most bankability. We want to really push boundary setting stories. And if that happens to correspond, then great. But to us, we're judging works off off their caliber or the way that it resonates with us. And also, we're going to be a cooperative. We've been working extensively on bylaws and working with a great organization that helps start up cooperatives. They've told us point blank we've never really seen a publishing company that's doing what you guys are doing. There's other publishing companies that are co-ops, but they've never worked with one, and because it's such a rare thing, and it's really, really awesome to be a part of this and intersect that with the horror space, which I always feel like, to me anyway, has always been on the cutting edge of trailblazing. I always think about those old slashers in the 70s and 80s, and how those were some of the only movies that I can think of for a long time that had a female lead, and how a lot of the first big movies from artists of color were horror movies. Like Candyman was such a beautifully pro-black movie that came out of horror, and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit about Third Estate. We're here to create a more ethical environment to foster stories, treat our artists with integrity, treat our workers with integrity, be as transparent as possible about the creative process, in hopes that we can inspire a cultural shift to spotlighting artists and giving artists a more whole existence, financially, spiritually, and artistically, and helping people just become a better person from having interacted and built a community with.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard me talk about this ad nauseum, Kat, but it's new to the audience, and I'm
Yes,
happy.
exactly.
But no, I'm really passionate about it. It's been something that I've been on my mind for a long time, and yep. So our first project is Spectrum. Actually, the books came in today. Anyone who's watching this right now, this is the first time anyone has seen this book. And there it is.
Looks amazing.
You guys want to see what's inside? You know who did the inside, right? You're looking at her. Interior formatting by Catherine Silva. Oh, there we go. There we go. I was holding it the wrong way. Inverted camera and all. But yeah, look, it's beautiful. It's a fantastic collection. There's a lot of stories in there that actually do explore existentialism, because we didn't really touch upon here is the way that existentialism affects somebody who's neurodivergent like that can be a little bit different, because we already process ideas and concepts very differently, which I'm sure people are gathering as we talk. and my answers are probably a little bit atypical, but a lot of our authors explored grief, existentialism, and have so many different formats of stories, which can be a pain in the butt to format. So all the props to Kat for dealing with my mad lab works and making it beautiful on the page. But it's a lot of excellent stuff, a lot of different types of stories that really encapsulate a spectrum of experiences. Mm-hmm. It's really exciting. It's the first autistic horror anthology ever. I know there's some neurodivergent anthologies, but I don't think there's ever been an autistic horror anthology. So it's really, we're coming out the gate showing people we're going to be here and we're going to do projects that people aren't taking on elsewhere, because these people deserve to be heard just as much as the world. And I will die on that hill. Like, I will fight on that hill until I sound even more towny than I already do. So that's the key on that.
It's an insanely good anthology. There are some stories in there that will stay with me for a while because of how good they are. Just I'm not gonna point many fingers, but there's one in particular that I think is the fourth one in.
Oh, I'm opening to find out.
it has a lot of variety in the formatting, and it is an incredible story. So story number 4, everybody. Definitely one to look out for, but definitely read all of them because they are all amazing and you will love this anthology. And it is currently up for pre-order. It comes out April 2nd, right?
Yes, World Autism Awareness Day. So this book will be releasing on Autism Awareness Day. Like Kat said, pre-orders are available on our website. We have signed art cards from the illustrator, who I like to say is the 21st story of the anthology, because this piece is not, the cover of this was not, hey, draw something spooky. We asked them to draw, what does neurodivergence feel like to you? And this is what they came with. So that's a story onto itself, which is really fun to have a story with no words.
That's really cool. I didn't realize that. Yeah, I was kind of wondering where the inspiration came from. Yeah, cover art is by, is it Lamontia? Is that the correct?
Sure. Yeah.
And they're an incredible artist. You should definitely check out their work. People in the audience, if you have not seen it. And yeah, keep an eye on Third Estate. See what we're up to next. There is a website at thirdestatebooks.com, I believe.
Yes.
And yeah, cool stuff is coming. So keep an eye out.
Absolutely.
And I believe that will bring us to the end of our broadcast tonight. So thank you very much, Aquino, for the towny accent and for all of the wonderful knowledge about existential horror.
No problem, kid. That's what I do.
I just want to show this comment from Leslie, who is saying, amazing, so proud of you. It's really awesome.
That's that mother-in-law love. That's right, everybody. I get along with my in-laws. Heyo. No, I love them. They're great. They're very supportive. If you ever go to a con and see me, there's a non-snowball's chance that they will also be there lurking. You'll know where they are. They are the loud Sicilians.
There you go.
So yeah, thank you for having me, and everybody, I hope you have a great night. Be sure to pre-order, and if you ever have any questions, my door is always open to anybody in the community that wants to talk. Thank you.
All right, and so thank you all for joining us this evening. That was a really fun discussion. I liked it a lot. Next week, we will be on, it'll be March 21st, and we will be discussing psychological horror with Elsie Marino, which I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while. He's a fellow grief horror writer too. That is a recurring theme this season, just so you know. And if you have missed any of our previous shows and would like to catch them, they are all going to be available on my YouTube channel. The link is in my link tree in the description of my Facebook page. So, thanks again, and I hope you guys have a great evening.